Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy, and we are going to be talking about YouTube in today's video. I have been doing YouTube for about 7 years. 5 of those years have been full-time, and so I'm going to talk about my experience with YouTube. Some of the most common questions I get asked when I run into people in the real world is, how did you get into YouTube, and how are you able to do it full-time, and what is it like to do YouTube full-time? So we'll kind of bounce between the different topics and just talk about the whole situation in today's video. Let's get into it. Let's start things off by talking about how I actually got into YouTube. This actually starts all the way back in 2016 when I had just turned 19 years old and was going into my first semester at the University of Utah. Now, my plan, like a lot of people, was to get at least a bachelor's degree, if not a master's, and maybe a PhD. I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to get the degree in at this point. I was taking a bunch of exploratory classes for my first semester, but that was the general path. That completely fell apart by the end of the semester. So in that semester, I learned that college professors do not care about you like high school, middle school, or elementary school teachers do. And that was really difficult for me because I was paying tuition versus before, right? You don't pay tuition, right? Tax dollars pay for elementary, middle, and high school. And then on top of that, I wasn't actually learning anything in the classes. I learned this much about politics, didn't take a single political class, by the way, and I learned this much about the actual subject matter within each of the classes. And so from my perspective, university was all about being a part of a particular political group rather than actually learning the subject matter. And I said, that doesn't make any sense. I want to learn subject matter so then I can actually go and get a job in the real world. So I dropped out. And in this period of dropping out, I decided that I needed to get some sort of sales job because that was the only type of job that I saw listed where you didn't need to have a college degree and you had the ability to make a decent income. My thought process back then was I need to make at least enough money to offset the fact that I'm not going to college. So during this time where I'm trying to figure my life out, I can at least put some money in the bank to make it so that I can maybe pay for vocational training, or maybe I'm going to go to a different university. I just really wasn't sure at this point. So the sales job that I ended up taking was at the Larry H. Miller Dodge Ram in Sandy, and I did absolutely horrible when I started out. I was by far the worst recruit that I think that they had ever had. My first full month at the dealership, I sold half a car. Like, that gives you an idea of just how bad I was at selling cars. I'm surprised they didn't fire me, but they didn't. By the end of the year, I actually ended up doing really well. So I sold half a car my first month, and then by the end of that year, I had sold over 100 cars. So that means that it was exponential in terms of my increase of volume. Now, also at the end of the year, I decided to start making YouTube videos for a couple of reasons. So first off, people kept telling me that social media was going to be the future, but nobody was using it. And then the next part of it was the fact that I had all this free time at the dealership. So I figured, why not use this free time to try out this new thing that everyone says is going to be the future, but nobody's actually partaking in it? So I started making YouTube video reviews on this channel. And again, the initial goal was to try to attract more customers. That's what everyone told me that these videos would do. And then I also thought on the side, well, people make money off of YouTube, so maybe these videos will eventually make money. So then if I have a bad sales month, then I'll still be able to make a paycheck. And so that was kind of the origination of the channel. Is I was just trying to get more customers because although I had improved my sales, I still wasn't that good of a salesperson by the end of the year, and figured that would help out. And then also I wanted to make a little bit of extra money so that when I had those bad months, well, I'd still be able to pay the bills. Now, this whole process continued for about a month and a half. So at the end of 2017, bleeding a little bit into 2018. And then I decided to actually take a break from the channel because what I discovered was that first off, I wasn't making any money. Second off, it was way more time consuming than I had initially expected. And then I wasn't actually getting any customers from the videos. So throughout the entirety of 2018, I just focused on selling cars. I sold over 200 cars that year, which was really good for the dealership that I was working at. And I just didn't make YouTube videos. But then 2019 rolls around and I just have this itch to go back and make more videos because I figured that based on the fact that the videos that I had posted for about a month and a half in 2017, 2018 range had gotten a certain amount of views. I can't remember how many views it was. I think it was tens of thousands, and that I had 500 subscribers, that if I had put more time into the channel, then it would actually turn into what I had originally planned. So starting in February of 2019, I started posting a video every single day. I reviewed cars at the dealership that I worked at, a few other dealerships in the area, and things just exploded after that for me. I don't know exactly why, because I didn't change that much with my videos. I think it could have just been a timing thing, but I went from having about 500 subscribers in February to I hit 1,000 in March. And that was also the same time that I became monetized, where I was actually making money. And that was really exciting. It wasn't a lot. I was making like $6 or $7 a day, but I was like, wow, I'm making money in my sleep at this point. By the end of 2019, the channel had amassed, I think, about 30,000 subscribers roughly, and I was getting millions of views every single month. And so I had actually gotten to a point probably in, I would say, September, August range of that year, where I was making more off of the YouTube videos than I was from the sales job. Now, my plan was to continue to do both, but there was a lot of really big changes that were happening at the dealership at the time. And so what I decided is, my best option was to just go into YouTube full time, even though it was a big risk, but just go into it full time and just kind of leave the dealership world behind, because I wasn't going to be able to manage both of them with all of the changes that were happening at the time. Now we are officially in the land of full-time YouTube, so let's talk about what this actually has looked like. So the first 2 years were, I would say, the most difficult, and here's why. January of 2020, that was my first full-time month into YouTube. I learned that I was doing so many things wrong on the platform. And so I had to spend literally weeks rehauling my entire YouTube page. And this actually ended up increasing revenue by like 40% by the time that I was done. So it had a massive positive impact that I do want to accentuate for something that's gonna happen a little bit later. But yeah, I just learned that YouTube was way more complex than I thought. I thought that YouTube was literally just make video, edit video, post video, make money. That was my experience for the first year that I had done, or that I had been making YouTube when I was still working at the dealership. But there's way more to it, especially if you're gonna do it full time. Now, a few months later, the whole COVID thing happened, and my revenue just went down by a massive amount, by about 40 to 50%. So all those changes that I had made were pretty much erased overnight. But the benefit that I see is, if I hadn't made those changes, then it would have been even worse than what I had experienced. It took like 6 to 7 months for things to finally recover over the course of 2020. But that's one thing that people don't really think about too much with YouTube compared to a traditional job. In a traditional job, of course, things that happen in the economy can have a negative impact where you get laid off and all that. And YouTube, you don't ever get laid off, but you can have your revenue literally overnight just get cut in half because a particular person is elected in office. That's something that I've seen happen over the course of being on YouTube full time. Or if someone says something, anything that happens economically, there's so many things that can impact whether or not advertisers are willing to spend money into YouTube. And so the fluctuations are actually a lot worse than what I experienced in sales. So anyways, the first 2 years was basically just trying to figure out how to work with the platform. And this was happening at a time that YouTube was also changing a lot with how their algorithm performs. And so I just had big fluctuations for these first 2 years. But by the end of it, I had figured out things enough to where I was able to create stability for my channel. And because of this stability for the next 3 years, things have been smooth sailing for the most part. The things that have really changed over these next 3 years was I focused more heavily on adding more and more dealerships into my dealer network. That's how I'm able to get access to so many cars. I film with probably about, I would say 70 plus dealers at this point. And so I get access to pretty much everything. And so that was the next big challenge, was just integrating more and more dealers so that I had more and more content to film on the channel. And so that's kind of like I know it's a very rough depiction, but that's kind of my experience going into YouTube full time. Is I had to figure out the platform, but then once I figured out the platform, well, at least enough for me to be able to make, consistent revenue, it made it so that I could just focus on the videos that I post, and being able to focus on that kind of had this positive feedback loop where now my channel just kind of looks like this. I know that's not exciting for a lot of people, but for me, that means that I can base my life around a relatively stable paycheck. Now, in summary, after doing YouTube for 7 years and full-time for 5 years, I can tell you that YouTube is way more difficult and way more complex than I could have ever imagined when I first started out. Again, I thought it was just make video, edit video, post video. It is so much more than that. But I think this is actually what makes YouTube the most fulfilling in terms of a career path. And if you're someone that likes things that are really challenging, that's where YouTube could definitely work out for you. Obviously, it is very difficult to get into the very small percentage of people that can not only make money from YouTube, but actually make enough money to make a living full time. But if you are able to get there, like, it's the biggest benefit that I see is not the money and it's not the notoriety, it is the adventure. Like, prior to doing YouTube, I spent the entirety of my life within a 2-mile radius of the house that I grew up in. Post YouTube, I have explored pretty much the entirety of the state that I live in. I live in Utah. It's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And that was only made possible by doing the YouTube stuff. And it was obviously a necessity, right? I have to drive all over the state to get access to all the cars that I film for the channel. And then I've also met people from everywhere around the world. A lot of people move to Utah because of the culture that we have here. So that's part of it. But the other part of it is just the fact that there's people from all corners of the earth that watch car reviews. That's something that's kind of weird for me to find out, but that's what I found out over the years. So I've just talked to people from so many different places. And so even though I haven't actually explored the world, it kind of feels like I've explored the world because I have been able to meet or talk to so many people from so many different places. And so for me, I know it sounds cheesy, but that's the thing that I've enjoyed the most is the difficulty and the journey part, and being able to make a living while doing that, I think is really cool. So let me know your thoughts on that. See ya.